just about 30 seconds.
You would know better than any of us.
Okay, I've got 7 o'clock, despite what that clock says. Everybody else got 7?
7.
7? All right. If we're good in the back, I will call to order the College Township Council Meeting of Thursday, June 5th, 2025. First item on the agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. For those who can stand, please stand and join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Janet, I see your hand up. Before we go to public open discussion, just a note on the agenda that consent agenda tonight, we will deal with that immediately after new agenda items and before SP1 special presentation. So just a slight adjustment in the order of the agenda. That'll take us to public open discussion. This opportunity for anybody in the room or online to address council on anything that is not already on the agenda. I see nothing in the room. Janet, is that what your hand's for? Maybe?
Just wait.
Maybe she didn't realize she did.
You can't hear us?
I can't hear.
Okay. We're working on it.
It's usually the owl.
The owl.
Is it turned up?
Up on the laptop.
Here's now.
We just can't have nice things.
Janet, any better now?
We'll take that as a no.
And she came through.
Can Sue hear us?
Sue, can you hear us?
Nope.
Maybe log out and log back in. Could be that.
We're gonna switch the owl out.
Okay.
Hi, Janet. Hi.
Oh,
They can
Janet,
hear-
we
They can hear
you.
each other.
Yeah, you guys can hear each other, but Janet, you still can't hear us?
I can text her.
Sue can,
Can't hear you.
No, okay.
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, so he'll grab the other one.
It's always something different.
It's absolutely a good way
You
to
know,
stay there.
sometimes if you just turn it off and turn it back on.
Let's call our IT guy.
We hear you now.
Oh,
Yeah.
you got us now.
So,
There you go.
Well, Adam has his
Take a
message.
bow. Take a bow.
Second time this week,
yay.
All right.
right, Mark?
Thank you.
That was some
Second time
magic,
this
dude.
week.
Okay.
That was some magic.
Drop the mic.
So text Mike and say never mind.
Yeah, that's true. I'll listen to
It's our
him.
new IT guy, now you
have
just
the-
need to learn how to fix the coffee.
It'll fritz out about the time he gets back up.
All right, Janet and Sue, just an update. What we decided to do is I've changed the agenda order so that we're going to take the consent agenda immediately after new agenda items and before special presentation. I don't think it affects anything you're on here for, but I wanted to let you know that. And Janet, was your hand raised to tell us you couldn't hear us? Or did you have something for public? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sue.
Just a quick message. Thank you very much to the township crew for helping us with the street closing for the Strawberry Festival Saturday. And I'm hoping that they will also do something about rain. Hey, no rain. Can you could legislate that, please?
Yes.
I wish we could.
I'll accept
Tonight,
it.
we're gonna be doing 230 quarts of strawberries. And it's not gonna be
Oh, wow.
raining, so we have to do it outside, it's such a mess.
I think rain falls under the zoning officer.
Yeah, you can fix computers, but not rain.
Please pass that along.
All right.
And also I want to say the event, the barn dance, was really great. You guys did a really nice job. People had a really good time, so thank you.
Appreciate that. Would staff prefer a motion on the rain request, or is the hint sufficiently
Just a
passive?
consensus.
Consensus? All right. All right, that concludes public open discussion. That takes us to new agenda items. Anyone requesting consideration of a new agenda item? Looking in the room, not seeing anything online. And as noted, that will now take us to the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda includes the normal 3 sections, the first of which is 3 sets of minutes under CA1. The first, CA1A, is April 30th, 2025 College Township Council Planning Commission joint meeting minutes. CA1B is the College Township Council special meeting minutes from May 14th, 2025, and then CA1C is the College Township Council regular meeting minutes from that same day, or from the next day, May 15th, 2025. The second part of the consent agenda is CA2, which 3 pieces of correspondence, the first of which is CA2A, an email from Dan Materna dated May 12, 2025 regarding a casino. CA2B is a letter from Pantera Engineering dated May 22nd, 2025 regarding a time extension for the Shiloh Commercial Park Phase 1 Final Land Development Plan extension to September 13th, 2025. And CA2C is an email from 7 Brew dated May 30th, 2025 regarding a time extension for the 7 Brew drive-through coffee land development plan extended to September 16th, 2025. And then lastly, it's CA3A, 2 action items, the first of which is CA3, which 2 action items, the first of which is CA3A, Resolution R-25-14, PennDOT Winter Maintenance Agreement. And the second is CA3B, Proclamation P2503, recognizing June 2025 as LGBTQ Pride Month. Cheryl, is there any desire to pull any of these items before I accept the motion to accept the consent agenda? No? No? All right. How about a motion then? Anyone?
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second?
All right. All in favor of accepting and approving then the consent agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Tonight's consent agenda has been accepted and by motion approved. That now takes us to special presentations, SP1, Proclamation P-25-03, recognizing June 2025 as LGBTQ Pride Month. I am going to turn the floor over to our Council Vice Chair, Susan Traynor, to read the proclamation.
All right, Proclamation P-25-3, LGBTQ plus Pride Month, June 2025. Whereas in June of each year we celebrate lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ plus Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall riots that took place in June of 1969, and we are recognized as a catalyst of the movement, for LGBTQ plus rights. Whereas all College Township residents should be able to live and work in a safe and inclusive community free from discrimination. And whereas our LGBTQ plus community members are integral contributors to our social, civic, economic, artistic, cultural, spiritual, and academic vitality in the State College area and Center region. Recognizing and valuing the uniqueness in each of us empowers all of us. And whereas we recognize that discrimination and exclusion continue to exist in the daily lives of LGBTQ plus individuals, and whereas College Township is committed to protecting the civil rights of our LGBTQ plus community members, and we stand in solidarity with LGBTQ plus Americans in their ongoing struggle against discrimination and injustice. And whereas College Township Council and staff remain committed to ensuring its policies and practices do not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Council of the Township of College, Center County, Pennsylvania, that we hereby recognize the month of June as LGBTQ+ Pride Month, adopted this 5th day of June 2025 by the Council of the Township of College, Center County. And Trevor White is here from Center LGBT+ to give us some words and accept the proclamation.
Trevor, the podium is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, members of College Township Council and staff, for this proclamation. This month is dedicated to the pride and acceptance that we have all worked towards, and I want to briefly discuss why we should be proud this month, even if we aren't members of the LGBT+ community. As you already mentioned, Madam Vice Chair, on June 28, 1969, in Greenwich Village, police raided a nightclub, the Stonewall Inn. It was a well-known LGBT+ community space. The only so-called crime these patrons committed, daring to be queer in a hostile nation. Police raids on gay-friendly establishments would oftentimes result in public outings of the attendees, further resulting in economic and social harms. A good example of how the kinds of harm that would result from publicly outing someone at this time was the Lavender Scare just a decade prior, which of course preceded the Red Scare. The Lavender Scare had the explicit goal of removing members of the LGBT+ community from federal service. This explicit and systematic exclusion from employment during the economic boom that America experienced in the mid-20th century functionally locked many members of the LGBT+ community out of economic mobility and reaching what was at the time a growing middle class. But as a country, we moved on from publicly shaming and outing people. Instead, we can fast forward to the 1980s, where our nation allowed disproportionate outcomes to rampage through the queer community in the form of a virus. Queer people died in droves as the nation stood by. The side effect, of course, was that this negligent response to HIV and AIDS bled over into other communities. Contaminated blood products as a result of this lackadaisical approach resulted in nearly 10,000 hemophiliac patients contracting this virus. It's important to note that when one group is determined as less than deserving, others will suffer. I mention these shameful events of our past because these are important markers in our history, in the history of our community, that tell us just how far we've come. It's important to remind ourselves of what happens when our friends and family members are forced to think of themselves as deserving less, as less than equal. 40 years ago, we were deemed an acceptable sacrifice on the altar of moral purity. 60 years ago, we were required by law to wear 3 pieces of clothing that matched our sex assigned at birth. 70 years ago, we were not able to serve in the federal government, and up until just about 10 years ago, we weren't allowed to openly serve in the military either. However, now we live in a time where our municipal government officials recognize the importance of the LGBT+ members of our community and the many contributions that we have made over the years. This proclamation reminds us of why it's important to be proud of who you are and how far we've all come, regardless of your sexual orientation, but especially for those whose sexual orientation and gender identity have been historically targeted. This month is about being proud of the trailblazing drag kings and queens at Stonewall, being proud for those of us that survived through the AIDS epidemic, and being proud of the people who have fought for our equality and representation in society. It's about being proud to be who you are, regardless of how you identify or your sexual orientation. And it's for this reason that I want to thank the College Township Council and staff for recognizing June as LGBT+ Pride Month. Regardless of whether or not you identify as a member of this community, we all have a lot to be proud of in our advancements in equality, and it would not be possible without the continued support from our communities and our elected leaders. Thank you for standing with us during these trying times, and thank you again for all your hard work in making College Township a welcoming home for all.
Don't run away, don't run away.
Okay, mind if I grab a picture? Because if you want to come out away from the screen, sorry. I'll try to get it, sorry. Thank you. Yep, thanks, Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor, thanks for taking the, first of all, I can say you're welcome on behalf of College Township. And thank you for taking the time tonight, to come and be part of this. I think it makes it a little bit more special when someone is here, in person to accept the proclamation. So Thanks again. That then does, unless, are any comments beyond that? There's not much more to say beyond that, is there? It's a tough act to follow. All right, that would then conclude our only special presentation. Since we have no plans, that would take us to reports. Under reports, the first of the 4 items is the manager's update. There is a written update included in our packets. Is there anything the manager has to offer beyond what's in the packet?
Just one item. Earlier this week, at the end of last week, we did roll out the recently adopted solicitation policy that council had previously approved. To the best of my knowledge, that is up and running and functional. I don't know, either Mark or Mike, do we have an indication of how many folks have taken advantage of that at this point?
Give me 1 second and I'll show it on the screen here.
Probably between 20 and 30. I did field the first complaint today. A solicitor had picked up their permit at the beginning of the week. Tuesday evenings, after late in the evening, someone registered, and they had someone knock on their door today. I did call the applicant. They profusely apologized. They said they did print out the list and get it to their people. They will print the updated list and make sure everyone is aware. And this was something that we anticipated. Someone gets a permit, and after that fact, somebody jumps in, and I didn't see that as anything egregious.
Yeah, just for council's edification, this is the Do Not Knock registration page on our website. It can be found at the bottom of the website or under the How Do I section of the website. If you scroll down, it's a very quick form to fill out, just a couple pieces of information we need. And the personal information, name, email address, phone number, that's all for internal purposes, so we can contact the group on an annual basis. At the very bottom of the page is the list of everybody that's signed up, and we're well beyond our 20 plus at this point. It's growing pretty rapidly, so yeah, we've got an active list, so we try to make it as user-friendly as possible for solicitors. They can go in and see that list in real time.
And that was everything that I had to present to council this evening. But if there's any questions on the manager's update or the no-knock program, we can do our best to answer those.
All right, well, let's start with the questions or comments on the do not knock list. Anyone? So just to be clear, once someone's signed, when an applicant gets a permit, we're not following up with them with the list. It's on them to check.
Our intention is to provide a copy of the current list when they pick their permit up, and advise that we suggest they check it daily because it could be added to at any time.
Okay. All right, anything else on the manager's update? The rest of it's fair game. Adam, is there anything beyond the note about the path to campus terminus moving slightly to the north? Is that anything we should be concerned about?
No, we're still in a bit of a discovery process about how that's going to impact. We did impact the project. We did have an update today with the Gray Star Development folks. We can expect, and I believe it is in July, July 15th at Planning Commission and July 17th at Council, there will be a sketch plan that's brought forward. So we'll have an opportunity at that point in time to see what the alignment looks like coming into that facility as it relates to the path to campus. And we'll have the opportunity to ask some questions at that point in time. As it stands, Don, am I missing anything at this point?
No, we presented the alignment to the Keller engineers who's doing our path to campus and said, make sure that we tie into the way they want it to go through their development. So
it does fall short of, it's a little shorter run than what we had originally anticipated in terms of the overall length of the project. But depending upon some of the grades of where they are suggesting that we tie in to the rest of the sidewalk system, it remains to be seen if there are any cost savings associated with that. And so, from an engineering standpoint, those will have to be sorted out.
Okay, anything else? If not, then we'll move to item B under reports, COG Regional, County, and Liaison reports. Going chronologically, I believe the first meeting since our last council meeting would have been the COG Parks and Rec Governance Committee. Did that happen?
Yes, it did.
May 28th?
We took our second review of the proposed memorandum of agreement or intergovernmental relationship agreement between the Center Region Parks and Rec Authority and the COG and the member municipalities. Continues to grow, good document. We've gone from nothing to a pretty robust document. We're going to take one more look at it, and then we're going to be sending it out to the authority for their review, and to, I believe, the managers is going to be the next review in that, and those comments will come back to us and further modification with the intent that it ultimately be approved by the authority, the COG, and the individual participants in the Parks Articles Agreement. We also looked at a very old document of how does a park get into the regional system, and I think the consensus was we're throwing it out and starting over, and the COG staff provided a really good leaping off point for that, and we'll continue to review that next month. Then we'll get into the bylaws of the authority, which will be interesting. So I believe Kathy Madison is bringing the draft agreement to the College Township Parks committee, and we'll be anxious to hear their comments back.
Questions for Rich? I got to ask this.
You don't have to.
Yeah, you're right, I don't have to. But I have to.
Okay.
If on the, how does a park get into the regional, is it assumed that everything in the regional is grandfathered in, or is it a possibility that a current regional park may not meet the current criteria? And you don't have to answer that.
Yeah.
I think I've made my point.
Right.
I'm a little concerned about that.
Well, interestingly, one of the things that we're doing is including exhibits to the agreement. A couple of the agreements are the matrix that have been approved, the two matrix that have been approved by the general forum. Those will be supporting documents of the agreement. And another one is a listing of what is considered a regional park.
I'm just a little worried that we're going to set a standard, and there's going to be some current parks that are regional that don't meet that standard.
I don't think, I haven't heard that discussion yet. And,
Okay.
and actually there was, as I recall, there was an action by the general forum establishing what was regional park.
Okay.
So I don't think that's going to happen, but we put it into an exhibit. Exhibits are easier to update than full agreements. And so we put it in there and we said, okay, let's all agree this is where we're starting from.
Adam?
This is specific to what is a regional park, not what is
Absolutely.
a park that is maintained by Center Regional
By the
Parks
agency.
and Rec.
Yeah.
Okay, then then never mind.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of the thing, the fine tuning that we're doing is it gets thrown out, Center Region Parks and Rec. Well, is that the agency? Is that the authority? Is it, we're trying to, clear up those discrepancies, and the staff's doing a great job in trying to help themselves in providing clarity in these agreements on some of it's memorializing what they're already doing, but it establishes it for the future. So it doesn't have to be relitigated every time a project comes up.
Anything else for Rich? While you have the floor, it looks like facilities was the next.
It was. I'm disappointed to say that we were canceled for lack of quorum.
Oh,
The one main item on that I will just share was the Hess Field master plan. There's not an urgency on that. That's going to be coming back to us at our next meeting for us to, it was referred from the Parks Capital Committee to the Facilities Committee to offer thoughts, and so that's the next step in the process. Ultimately, it'll be coming towards general forum. One thing I would add, an update on Whitehall Road Regional Park. So I think the last thing you heard was that the design engineer had submitted revisions to the stormwater as-built submittal to Ferguson Township. They use a outside engineering firm to review those. It has now been returned again with new required corrections, different than the first time. So that's still in flux. So we still don't have, that's critical. They can't get a certificate of occupancy until they get zoning approval. They can't get zoning approval without an approved stormwater as-built. You can't surety. That's one item that you cannot surety, so it needs to be approved. And so it's back into the design professional's hands. And
The park's original design profession.
correct.
All right, on that bright note, that would take us to,
I think that's.
Adam?
I just have to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, have there been discussions surrounding the park's original design professionals?
In which regard?
In the context of why are we here and the reasons
Oh.
why we are here. And again, it's intended to be a very generic question.
Yeah.
Yes or no would suffice for me,
Yeah.
for my purposes.
I know that there's been several discussions. A reminder, this is an authority project, so they have the lead. It's definitely been discussed. It hubbed around to bring somebody else in at the 11th plus hour is painful. There was suggestion that this last round of comments brought out things that weren't brought out before, so you can't fix what you don't know.
Yeah.
But if they broke something fixing something else, it's still nebulous. So, I mean, this just broke Monday, so I don't know that they've moved it forward, but just making you aware.
All right, after we fanned those flames, are we done? Are we done? Are we done?
We're done.
Okay. Yeah, I don't feel bad about asking my question now. That would take us,
As the former liaison to that project, and somebody that's been saying we need
Yeah.
stormwater as-built for a year
Oh, no,
and a
we-
half.
don't misinterpret.
No,
any of the
it's
comments.
just very frustrating.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
I'm very supportive of your participation and contributions in this effort. I'm not sure we'd be even as far as we are without you, so. If there's nothing else, then did HR meet?
We didn't have a quorum.
Okay, well, it was a tough month for a quorum. All right, that would then take us to land use, the Lucy Committee, and they did meet today, didn't they?
Yes, we
Yesterday?
did. We did meet
You
today.
had a quorum.
We did. It was a very exciting meeting, as exciting as Lucy is. So just, we reviewed the comprehensive plan again, went over the values and mission. Do believe that, we have these locked in now. There was some back and forth, but we're adamant to say, these are locked in now. Next step on that would be final approval of the big ideas. And then you'll start seeing that to the hub site that's being set up for all of that. Also went over the FLUME, which is the future land use map. And the biggest thing to take away from that is that they demoed a profile, public profile input page, which is pretty cool. where folks can go in and add comments, take a look at any of the current land use, add suggestions. Some of the questions to answer would be, like, where do you think new housing could go? Where would non-residential development be appropriate? And then, what changes do you think are needed and what should remain unchanged? So, for those folks, just to the general public too, right? So future land use map, and I know there's been conversations about growth boundary, right? Like, this is a thing that's part of our land use map, right? At the COG level. All right, so, also, there have been some trend reports pushed out that are pretty cool, and then I'll send out to you guys and share with you if you haven't seen them, and I'm sure they'll go on the website too. There's going to be more coming, so it's some neat stuff to kind of see, where our development has gone in the past, 20, 40 years, and how much is agricultural versus not, things like that. So there's some good stuff coming out of there. Then we just had two big matters of record that I wanted to. And you probably know about these from the MPO, but you had shared about the $500,000 PennDOT's project funding program for the Center County Resilient Route. So they updated us today that PennDOT awarded up to $1.3 million for all of those 3 phases. So they went back and found out there was more money available. So that's really good news. And then in May, the CCMPO was notified of 2 requests for supplemental planning awards. For the first was the $120,000 for the Benner Pike corridor study, and then the second was for $48,000 to complete the passenger rail access study on the countywide basis. So they do require a 20% local matching fund, and that was secured through the COG and CCMPO budget process.
That's already built into the budget.
Yep. So, that's it.
And just a clarification, because this has come up before on the passenger rail study. It's really an effort to identify the best, most feasible options for connecting the center region with the Amtrak service running east to west through. In particularly since at least there's still tentatively planned 2026 for a second trip west of Harrisburg. Right now there's only one east-west, one in each direction, running from any station south of us that's west of Harrisburg. You only have one option in each direction, starting tentatively in July in 2026. There'll be a second trip, which theoretically should make that travel more attractive. So we'll be looking, as the MPO, we'll be looking at options for how to best connect residents here with the stations south of us, be it Tyrone, Altoona, Huntington, to take advantage of it. Questions for Dustin? Adam?
Just out of curiosity, in the conversations with Lucy relative to the growth boundary, is there going to be some analysis that's going to be done about the growth boundary and impacts? Because that has obviously been something I've been advocating.
Yeah, and I know, and let me just clarify, there really wasn't discussion specifically about the growth boundary, just from the land use map and that. But I can take those back, and any specific questions, are we gonna have trend reports around to go growth boundary? I think where we're at now is really just that initial assessment and analysis of this is where everything stands. But the growth boundary is clearly delineated in all of the trending reports and all the reports, so you can start to see how that affects and hopefully extrapolate from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that helps. I think that to the extent that within this process that there's some ability to maybe dig a little bit deeper and to truly understand or analyze how the growth boundary may or may not have been, continues to impact our growth, I think it would be very beneficial from at least a knowledge standpoint to understand how that works and how that influences things, such as, for example, property values.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, by my list, we didn't have any Did I miss any COG reports? I didn't see any others in the calendar. That would then take us to staff, planning commission, other committee reports, since Matt's here. Oh, by the way, Trevor, you don't have to stay for the whole meeting. We will not be offended at all. Just wanted to let you know that. This is about as interesting as it gets. It kind of goes downhill after this. Oh, I mean, after the PC report. Oh, boy, I stepped in. Matt, PC report, then we've hit our peak.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't get to this, but at least 8 o'clock.
Matt Penn from the Planning Commission. Tuesday night, we discussed building setbacks. As you can see, this is various setbacks here. As far as front setbacks, pretty near unanimous agreement. Side setbacks, I would say unanimous agreement. Rear setbacks are a little more complicated. We actually passed a few things back to staff to clarify. For example, a rear setback is if there's an alley with a rear loaded garage versus just two lots that abut each other, things like that. But I think we're making progress in the process that we're doing now. Anybody have any questions?
Questions for Matt?
No.
Trevor, questions for Matt? Okay.
Last Friday, my son and my brother and I played in the Coaching versus Cancer golf tournament, and it's 4 golfers and then a Penn State celebrity. And normally I appreciate, the staff's tape and all that stuff, but I did a couple times glance over to this 4 foot and this 6 foot, and believe it or not, once all 5 of us missed a putt of 4 feet, and once all 5 of us missed a putt of 6 feet. And needless to say, we didn't win. Thank you.
All right. Other committee reports. Janet, we did have something that just came through the other day.
It's part of the supplemental.
Yeah. And
Those were,
Was that Kathy?
those were comments from Kathy Madison.
okay, that was summary. That was okay. Janet, anything on Township Park and Rec?
No, we have our June meeting coming up on Monday the 9th, and again, that's our tour. And whatever you're doing for rain control for the Strawberry Fest, I think we'd appreciate that for the parks tour also.
All right, consensus around the table for staff, correct? Okay.
We're moving towards a motion.
So be it.
All right.
I'm gonna have to add something to the CIP.
All right, questions for Janet?
Can I just add?
Sure, Sue.
I think this is okay if any one of you would like to join us. You're certainly welcome to 6 o'clock meeting at the Township Building.
This is Monday, June 9th?
Monday, June 9th, yeah.
All right, thanks for the invite. We'll do our best on the rain end. Actually, staff will do their best on the rain end. I don't know, Adam, Mike and I attended a meeting this morning. It's probably the appropriate time to bring it up. We were invited to attend a meeting facilitated by the Chamber, Craig Scott, to listen to a presentation on the importance of the planned Airport Connector Road. For those who aren't familiar with it, it would be a road that connects the airport or Foxhill Road with the interchange at the stub, road stub at the interchange with the Innovation Park. It's really not that far of a distance. I mean, it's been on a long-range transportation plan for, geez, I think as long as I've been around, because conceptually it's a really good idea. Looking at it, on a map, straight line makes all the sense in the world. However, the geography makes it a bit challenging. But anyways, the meeting was to, I think, bring local planners, municipal officials, PennDOT officials, airport and Penn State folks together to gauge interest in supporting the project. And more importantly, if there is support, how do we get it moving off of the long-range transportation plan wish list to possibly moving forward to be constructed someday. And I think I know as a rep for the MPO, I outlined the process along with PennDOT staff, how to officially get it moving using the money that we get from the county for transportation projects, but also highlighting the fact that projects of this size and scope are well beyond what the dollars that we have to work with, that we'd very likely have to pursue some independent source of funding, at least for the construction. So I don't know, I thought the meeting went fairly well. I don't know that anybody in the room disagreed on the value of it. There was some mixed feelings on how important it is compared to the other competing priorities that we have here from a transportation infrastructure standpoint. It doesn't meet the typical thresholds that PennDOT asks for when we prioritize the projects in the wish list to get them on the tip. But doesn't mean it couldn't be done. It doesn't mean it couldn't come up with an independent sponsor or champion, I think it was what Greg called, or an independent source of funding separate from what we get for our countywide allocation for the TIP. So the plan, I think, coming out of the meeting, what I gathered was that the best move forward, and this was suggested mostly by those of us in attendance from College Township, is that we seek funding to do a feasibility study so that we can identify the project more clearly, the intent, the benefit in that, going forward then, and using that to seek potential sponsors or funding sources. I think feasibility study is probably the best way to characterize it. Would you guys agree?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike did a really good job of outlining the process, how to work through the system to increase the likelihood that this project could get off of the idea list and at least onto the drawing board. Anything else from you guys? It's a good meeting, I thought. That would then conclude, I think, C, and take us to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging report. This is well, let's go with the report first.
Obviously, this being the first meeting of the month, I try to highlight as much as possible in it. Already acknowledged and did the proclamation for LGBTQ plus Pride Month. So that was one of the things on the list. Other months is Caribbean American Heritage Month, Filipino Heritage Month, National Immigrant Heritage Month. Some important days coming up. June 18th is the International Autistic Pride Day. June 19th is Juneteenth, and just for a reminder, there's an adjustment to our second meeting of the month. We're up into Wednesday on the 18th for our second meeting in acknowledgement of Juneteenth. And June 20th is World Refugee Day. And I also wanted to highlight this weekend, Saturday, June 7th, is the State College Pride Parade and Festival. Festival will be held at Sidney Friedman Park, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you can add that celebration to the list of folks wanting weather control.
We might be to the point where we need a motion.
It's getting off the
All right, thanks, Mike. This agenda item also is an opportunity for anyone in the public to address council on any DEIB issues. Let's see, we've already heard from Trevor tonight. Let's see, Janet, Sue, anything on this agenda item? All right, then I believe that concludes reports. We've already handled consent agenda. It takes us all the way to old business. Only one item under old business tonight, OB1, our refuse and recycling update. Staff, Mike in particular, did a really nice job, I think, of summarizing the a random discussion at the last meeting, figuring out what the questions were that we asked, following up with COG in the memo, and then presenting to us at least one point for discussion, and depending on the answer to that, potentially a couple more. So, Mike, anything else?
Sure, I wasn't going to go through the detailed responses. I'll tip my cap to Shelley Mado. She did respond pretty quickly with those answers to the particular questions. Again, those were framed around the approval process for fee waivers, how this comports with ADA, and last but not least, how those fee waivers are handled financially when one is granted. So I appreciate, and again, wanted to say thanks to Shelley for providing those responses. Based on my interpretation of what I got from those, I did come back with a question for council. That being, is council interested in potentially adjusting how at-door fee waivers are processed in College Township? Again, going back to the answers that you saw from Shelley, it's kind of a mixed bag as to how those are handled here across the region. From ours, where it's something that's brought forward to council, to the other extreme, where it's a decision made by COG administrative staff. So wanted to throw that back out to council to see what your pleasure was in terms of that process.
So before I seek, council's opinion here, does staff have any additional information, requests, or suggestions on that particular question?
Not in any particular notes, so.
All right. So
When the last that I can recall, and I don't know the year when we had this discussion, at that time, council was comfortable in dealing itself with those requests as it came. There's never been an overwhelming number of those, and council just, at that time, felt that they could easily accommodate that as part of a consent agenda, that type of a thing. So there was no particular magic, and there was really no overriding rationale about why they chose to do it that way. As far as any kind of a burden, if it was council's pleasure and it was left to staff to make the determination, I feel very confident that we could do that quite easily. I also would be equally comfortable in allowing COG to make the decision. They are running the program. They know the rules of the road, if you will. So I think any of the three options that are available are quite viable.
that's exactly what I was looking for. So having heard that, I'm just looking here to the left or to the right. Does anybody have any strong feelings one way or the other on that? Just to be clear, this is currently a council decision.
That is correct.
And the options are leave it there, delegate it to staff, or super delegate it back to the contracting entity. Dustin?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a proponent of simplifying the process, and to me, it seems like a simplification is removing steps. So just let the center, the COG make the decision. They have the application where we have, we representation, in the contract and on the committee. We know what the application looks like. We've got a problem with the process.
I agree. I was going to say the same thing.
Others?
Agree.
Yeah, all right. Well, I think we have a consensus here. And just to be clear, the initial application request originates at the COG office.
Yeah.
Okay, so following up with what Dustin said, we're just eliminating 2 steps to us and 2 steps back to them.
Correct.
And further, we have representation at several levels with COG. Outstanding. Thanks, Mike. I think the way that was framed made it really easy for us. Now, there are 2 additional potential discussion points, correct?
Yes, I think Rich was going to.
Okay, Rich?
So do we have to take any kind of action to?
Motion.
Yeah, so what are we modifying an ordinance? Are we directing, are we merely
I think it's
delegating?
At the
or-
moment, I think it's an administrative procedure. There's not an ordinance. We have an ordinance, but that ordinance allows for those administrative procedures. The point is, I think we're just really directing
There's
staff
something on
to
the public
notify-
record
right.
that says we've
Just
delegated this to
exactly
COG.
that, yeah,
Okay.
We're going to
And I
delegate
think
that.
the memo, the second bullet, or third bullet, gives us maybe some, gives us a potential motion.
Yep. All right, Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the COG Refuse and Recycling Program Administrator to make the approval denial decisions.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? We have a potential action. This would be an opportunity for anybody in the room to provide comment before we take action. Janet, Sue, you've heard what we've been talking about? Nothing? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried, process simplified. That's where I'm going with it.
Yeah. I'll notify Shelley tomorrow.
All right, that concludes old business. That takes us to new business, NB1, Resolution R-25-15, the 2026-2030 Capital Improvement Plan Review. And I do want to say that I appreciate what Mike has put together here for us. I mean, we have come a long way with our capital improvement plan process. However, I did remind staff that we didn't really, as a council, have an opportunity, it was no one's fault, to really talk about it. In other words, we carried over what we ended up with, and we added a few things that came up as a result of separate issues that we then folded into the capital improvement plan. So there was the only things that have really been added since last year were things that came up separately that we felt would be best addressed that way. And I wanted to just let my fellow council members know that there is an opportunity tonight, if there is any desire to talk about anything that has come up since last year that didn't get added by virtue of some other action, or if in the capital improvement plan there's anything in the later years that we would like to see moved up. So if there isn't anything, we could adopt the resolution as is tonight, but I wanted to make sure that we took the opportunity to entertain any big picture issue discussions or even some small tweaks. Because I think there would be no problem in coming back next month with any revisions. I'm not anticipating anything, but I think it's important structurally to have that discussion before we adopt it. Because we got consumed with the space allocation and the staff, and it kind of squeezed out our discussion at our work session on the capital plan itself. So with that, did anybody have anything they thought was missing or would like to at least float conceptually for consideration?
I just have a couple of clarifying comments to make, if I can. So first off, Mike pointed this out today or earlier this week, we're actually ahead of schedule from where we were last year in approving the capital improvement plan. And the way that we approve the capital improvement plan, we approve it as a planning document. So while it is very relevant, especially as pertains to budgeting for the coming year, when we get to that point later in September and October, the CIP is basically informing that construction of the budget document. So we always adopt it as a planning document, a planning tool, and we're ahead of schedule. So if there was a desire even beyond this evening to have additional conversation, I think that that may be something that could be accommodated.
All right, well, let's see what comes out of discussion tonight. But it was important to me structurally to have a dedicated moment, you know, to, you know, it's everything in here that, you know, where we left off last year, is anything new popped up, you know, that would change the priorities or even add or subtract something. So I'm looking, I'm not seeing anything to my left. Rich or Susan? No. Nothing? Oh, gee. Well, since I opened this door.
Do you have something?
Yeah. I just want to float this concept out and see if there's any support. We have obviously undertaken a pretty comprehensive evaluation of Dale Summit area. We have big plans for out there. We have the Path to Campus underway that's going to provide some pedestrian bike connections from here into campus. We have in the capital plan a sidewalk network that theoretically then would stretch that path of campus via Puddintown Road, sidewalk, Houseville Road, all the way out to Pike Street. And we have plans for the Dale Summit. I think that we, at some point, whether it's through this or a separate discussion, ought to be talking about how do we connect then the Dale Summit area to the planned sidewalk bike infrastructure that we're going to have in place from Pike Street all the way into campus. It then becomes the missing link. I don't have an answer, obviously, but I think consistent with everything else we've been doing, including the Dale Summit plan, including the Path to Campus, we ought to be at least identifying that as a missing link or as a future endeavor to try to complete that link. If we're successful in Dale Summit, it should be a place that should easily connect with campus.
Without using a car.
Without using a car. So it's not a discussion necessarily for tonight, you know, detail-wise. The idea is there any interest in sticking a placeholder somewhere in the capital improvement plan, you know, in the early years or out years, you know, to get something like that started. I mean, it starts with discussion and consensus.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask Mike and or Dawn. I know that we are completing design this year of the Hauserville sidewalk segment. And construction of that segment will be in 2026. What I don't know off the top of my head is where within the our capital plan, under what category we've identified that. Because I'm sure, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I want to find the right category to begin with.
Sure. So the category that you're looking for, Adam, that's the kind of the catch-all. It's the stormwater, MS4, traffic calming, ped bike category. Yeah.
No, didn't we talk about breaking that out at one point? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, at one point, if you remember in past iterations of the CIP, ped bike was actually in two places.
Yeah.
And what we did was we kind of brought them into one central location. But that honestly, that section's kind of a catch-all at this point.
So I'm pretty sure without pulling up the sidewalk master plan that linkage is on there.
Yep.
So all I'm really talking about is maybe giving it a separate distinction under the category of Dale Summit plan. Connection.
Yeah. Dale Summit connector.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll add that there is a rail bed that from Dale Summit in Vermont that I walk on almost a daily basis. So there's an informal
We've talked about that.
ped connection already from Vermont, and maybe there's an opportunity there to piggyback onto that as far as right-of-way or a ridden bike on a rails to trails alongside an active rail line. I don't know, I'm thinking really big picture, and all I'm trying to do tonight is gauge interest tonight, is there enough interest to add something in the mid to out years?
Again, just a quick comment, page 37 of the CIP is where you'll find the summary, and you'll see that we're very much front-loaded in 2026, and then there's nothing relative to those PEG connections, bike PEG connections. So it would be entirely appropriate if we were to identify something, even conceptually at this point, even a conceptual number that we would plug into one of these out years beyond 2026 for the purposes of capturing that kind of a connection somewhere, somehow to Dale Street, or Dale Summit. So.
Yeah, what I would probably suggest is thinking about it sequentially. It kind of mirrors the discussion we had earlier today on Airport Connector Road. The first step, particularly for that connection, as you start thinking about the reach into Dale Summit, is what exactly is that? The PED Master Plan talks about it in kind of generalities. We'd like to see a connection here, or maybe these kind of bypass connections, for lack of a better term. So you almost need a feasibility analysis of that magnitude to find that appropriate alignment. You referenced one already, Eric. Figure out exactly what that is, and then you can start targeting in years out. So I'm thinking about most likely a grant-funded study that quickly follows with a design and construction of a project. Much like we've done with Path to Campus. That's kind of that traditional development process. So I wouldn't be opposed at all at throwing something in maybe in 27, because you'd be applying for a grant in 26.
So that would be operating money for the grant.
Right.
And then we'd be plugging in capital for potential construction.
Yep.
Or even maybe engineering, can that be capital?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, as we've done with these, we kind of capture the whole picture. You don't want it disjointed, so you try to capture the whole picture in the CIP, even though it kind of crosses over between operating and capital funding.
So if there was a support, the understanding would be at some point in the budget, we're going to have to commit some operating funds to a local match for a feasibility study. And then, under the assumption we can do that, we would put a placeholder in for preliminary engineering 1 year and design and construction.
Yeah, ideally, one of those out years, you're going to have a big number, much like we do this year in our capital budget year for construction. But the hope is, as you go through this and do it in a sequential planned approach, that you're building the case for a big grant award at some point at a later date.
All right, I'm seeing heads nodding, so if there isn't opposition to this, then we would be asking staff to just come back next month with those numbers, or is that simple enough that we can?
Well, using some of the recent match requirements that we have, I think if we anticipated an out-of-pocket match on behalf of the township for something in the $25,000 to $30,000 range, I think that is going to be more than sufficient for the purposes of funding the type of study that I think is being anticipated.
Sure.
Would you guys agree?
Yeah, it depends on the scale of the study, and that's something that I think is a discussion amongst council. The more you narrow the study area, the smaller the number gets. So that's one of the pieces that we would probably have to have a discussion about before we made that next step. But yeah, 30 to 50 would be my number.
50, okay.
Match, not total.
Right, match.
Yeah, did prices just go down all of a sudden?
Yeah.
We've worked with your type long enough, we know.
Well played.
Yeah. All right, I don't see any opposition to that. What is staff's preference? Is that would you rather come back next month with a revised capital plan, or are we enough in sync that we could adopt tonight's resolution condition on that?
I think you're fine. That's my opinion. Adam's shaking his head too. I think it's pretty clear as what we were talking about, sequencing this out. You know, the number in the out year is, you know, a dartboard type number at this point until you work through that feasibility study.
Much like
So-
some of the other numbers already.
Exactly
Oh,
right.
absolutely.
So you refine that as it gets closer to your capital budget year.
The only true modification that this would take would be the number in the appropriate year and a narrative that matches up with that. So I feel very comfortable if council is agreeable to that. There is no reason you could not adopt, or subject to that particular change, or specific change.
All right. Well, I think we have a resolution, R-20.
Yes, it is.
Oh, Sue.
I was just gonna throw out two things. There's also First Avenue for that connection toward Dale Summit and Commercial Boulevard. But also, the railroad is really using the track, and they're okay with people walking on it, but they're not okay with putting any kind of path, just so you know ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. I was just noting that there was already an informal pathway, and there are examples. There are examples in the state of bike paths immediately adjacent to active rail lines. It would,
Lots of places, yeah. They don't have much right of way. I mean, they have what's there plus a little bit on each side, but it's pretty steep on the sides.
and to be totally honest, I think most of those examples are areas where there were two tracks, and they took one out, so the right-of-way existed
Right.
already, which we don't have here, except for the sidetrack area.
Right.
All
Okay,
right.
thanks.
Sure. Janet, did you have anything?
I raised my hand but then lowered it because Sue's already covered the issues of the fact that the tracks are still used. I've personally observed use there on a Thursday around midday twice in the last year, which isn't a lot, but I've noticed the trail or the tracks being used. And keep in mind, although it's not quite related, one of the placeholder items under local parks is for Mountain Terrace Park back in, coming up in, I think it's 2027, and it's for adjustments to the existing park up there when Mountain Terrace gets completed. So we do have something there. I don't know if it will really work out in the long term, but we do have some placeholders in that area already.
Okay, is that Mount Nittany Terrace or Mountainside? You're talking,
Mount Nittany Terrace.
okay.
Manor.
When that development comes through, is that
Yeah.
When if the development
If it
comes
does.
through.
Yes, if, big if.
All right, thank you. Sue?
One other thing, did you all get a memo from Derek Kell?
Yes.
Because I got one that David Schulte forwarded to me, but it's a really interesting idea for Stony Batter and for the mountainside. And he thought it was going to be on this agenda, so that's why I came. But it wasn't, you didn't get it?
It was,
He came and did a presentation.
yeah, it was
He did a presentation.
the last
Okay.
meeting. The last meeting, we heard from him.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sue, you were muted on that last piece.
oh, thank you, I'm out of that, I was out of that loop then. Thank you, we were away.
All right, I think we had a motion there, didn't we? Or we were about to get a motion? I forget.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a motion.
A motion. We want a
About to-
motion.
Do a motion.
All right. So at this point, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution for the capital improvement plan as subject to the revisions discussed tonight. Does that capture it?
Yep.
Do I have somebody to make that motion? Just, I have to say as I do.
So moved.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Any comments on the motion? Questions, concerns? All right, then all in favor of the motion to adopt Resolution R-25-15, the 2026-2030 Capital Improvement Plan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Excellent. Nice work, Mike and staff. on that.
I will get you the revised sections for your binders. As soon as they're completed, I'll let you know.
So this means next year, we'll be dealing with the capital improvement plan in what, April?
Oh, we're getting very efficient.
No, we're gonna start in
Be
October.
a year ahead of ourselves in a few
Yeah.
We're
more
gonna start in
cycles.
October.
Nice job. All
Have
right,
it done before the year.
all right. That concludes our only new business item. It takes us to staff informatives. We have two in tonight's packet. S1 is the inspection report from Meyer Farm, and SI2 is our April 2025 CCMPO update. That could have actually been in regular reports, couldn't it? That's where it usually ends up, isn't it?
The MPO?
Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anything staff wants to add?
Yeah, the only thing, as part of your supplemental that went out earlier this week, there is a 5-page CATA budget that we received, and I included that in the supplemental. I have nothing to say about it, but I just wanted to pass the information along in the event that there were any questions that we could get answers from CATA relative to that budget.
Any questions for staff on any of the staff informatives? So should there be any questions that come up on that, maybe we would discuss them at a council meeting and get a consensus. Sure. I haven't really had a chance to, I've only briefly looked it over. All right, then that takes us to council, staff, other matters.
I forgot to mention this earlier.
Then this is the time.
For this month, for Juneteenth, is a celebration that the borough hosts and NAACP. That's going to be June 14th and, the 13th to the 14th. So they have like a, the day before, Friday they have like a local artist in the area, and they have a display. And then on Saturday in the MLK Plaza, they have from 12 to 6 a free program, like a block party. I don't know if you guys have ever gone, but this is like the 3rd or 4th time they've done it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's the 13th and the 14th of June?
Yes, of June, yeah. So I wanted to mention it because it happens before our next meeting.
Okay, and since we're mentioning it, our next meeting is on Wednesday to avoid the holiday, right? We're meeting in 13 days instead of 14 days.
Glad you mentioned that.
And is there any other matters, other than the fact that it's only 8:12? Just want to point that out for the record. All right, then, at this point, I just got to tell you, Trevor, you decided to sit through the whole meeting. Normally, you would be here for 3 hours.
For sure.
Maybe Trevor should come to more meetings.
Yeah.
Trevor, you come to more meetings.
All right, so if there is no further business, the chair will accept the motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:13 p.m.
So moved.
Do I have a second? We are adjourned.
I got time for homework, so this is nice. The early-
Goodness.
Probably a boatload.